watching the Mystical Green Beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and today I wanted to talk about Tom King's Batman. I did a video like this a while back when talking about I Am Bane, which I still absolutely love and think really highly of, because it made Bane, who was this character who had a really strong debut, but turned into a joke after a few years, really menacing once again. I mean, I hear really good things about Gail Simone's run on Secret Six and how well she handles Bane there, but I'm talking specifically about him being a foil for Batman, and in all honesty, he hasn't been since Nightfall, really. And from the looks of it, Tom King has a real affinity for the character and is doing everything that he can to make him the villain that he thinks he should be and could be. In fact, I read this in an interview he did a while back where he compared Bane to Doctor Doom, and I think that's a really fascinating way to look at the character. But now I'm just getting ahead of myself. So let's just get into my thoughts on this run so far. And starting off, this run hasn't been all too popular amongst a lot of readers. Like, it's a critical darling, but many consumers just can't seem to see why. And I get it. Because even though aside from some execution issues that I have with some of his ideas, I personally really enjoyed King's Batman run. But I can also see why a lot of others don't, and why I'm in the minority. First of all, it had the misfortune of coming out off the heels off of Scott Snyder's run on the character, which was highly successful both critically and commercially. Plus, it had the added bonus of being a lot of people's gateway into the character, while also playing with familiar staples in Batman pop culture and mythology, while also remixing a lot of ideas with this Lovecraftian horror twist to them. And I'll talk more about Snyder's run in the future once he's finished his last Batman arc, which was teased in Metal, but my opinions on it aren't as high as a lot of other people's. It doesn't mean that I hate it, because I don't, but it's very hit or miss for me. Because when it hits, it's like watching Hawkeye and Green Arrow strike a bullseye on either side of a dartboard simultaneously. But when he misses, it's like watching a basketball player try to shoot a three-point shot, but instead of the ball going into the hoop, it flies out of the window and hits a pregnant woman in the face, causing her to fall into the street and getting obliterated by a semi-truck. And that's partially the reason why I'm so high on Tom King's run, and why I probably feel the way that I feel about it. But that's just me. And that's not a lot of others. See, Tom King is taking Batman in a lot of weird, uncomfortable directions, especially for people who feel like Snyder's Batman was the end-all be-all for a modern Batman interpretation. So, I just wanted to get into some of the ideas that Tom King and the various artists that he's working with are playing with. Firstly, this notion of Bruce Wayne being the man and Batman being a symbol that Bruce has to take responsibility for. And this is something that a lot of people have differing opinions on, because some writers like to go the Bruce Timm route and say that Batman is who he is 24/7 and Bruce Wayne is just the mask. And that's a nice interpretation of the character, but it's not my preferred take. I much prefer the idea that Batman is a symbol, meanwhile the billionaire playboy businessman gimmick is also a mask, but there's a third guy who's somewhere between Batman and Bruce Wayne, and that's who Bruce really is. And he has to take responsibility for both public personas. And while this approach has been taken in comics before, and isn't anything new to the landscape of Batman, what is new, strangely enough, is what's done with it. Because we've seen Bruce get screwed over by his rich kid man-child persona before, much like in No Man's Land when he tries to get federal aid for Gotham, and the courts basically laugh at him because, to them, he's Bruce Wayne. He's nothing more than a rich kid man-child. Or how in Long Halloween, when Bruce is suspected of being the holiday killer by Harvey Dent because of some business choices that he made while being mind-controlled as Bruce Wayne. But in Tom King's run, he almost takes a Spider-Man approach where the superhero starts to become a burden on the man himself, which is really interesting within the context of Batman. So, spinning out of King's I Am trilogy, and I'm not sure if that's the official name for it or not, but as it is, I want that to be adapted as an animated movie trilogy, or hell, even a live-action movie trilogy. But I also don't, because it works well within the medium of comics, and I'm not sure you can adapt it, but I digress. It's established that Bane, Catwoman, and Batman view themselves as physical representations of ideas or states of mind. They see themselves as forces of nature. For Bruce, he becomes the Batman, and the Batman is dignity and kindness through pain and self-sacrifice. Batman is suicide. He bears the weight of Gotham's pain so that Gotham doesn't have to. He's the answer to the city's prayers. He's Christ. And whenever you're in trouble and you cry out for God to save you, instead of God coming to your aid, you get Batman. And as a result, Batman's become deified by the city. Gothamites have not only rebuilt their communal consciousness around Batman, but they also take his word as law as though he were God. Hell, in the wedding issue, there's even a joke where Batman enters Porky's bar, which is just the greatest thing ever because now it means that Batman Elmer Fudd one-shot is canon, and I love everything about that idea. And Porky says Gotham is Batman. I mean, the judge that he's talking to later corrects him and says that Gotham is instead of mystery, but it doesn't change the fact that King is playing up the fact that while other heroes do exist in Gotham, Gotham is synonymous with Batman. But that deification and near blind worship of Batman is kind of a problem, because Batman isn't God. He's a man. And Bruce recognizes the way that Gotham treats the legend of Batman, and it's starting to unnerve him. He's not the Dark Knight. He's not this urban legend. He's a man. And like all men, he can break. And that's exactly what Bane is doing to him in this run. But again, I am getting ahead of myself. So piggybacking off that idea of Batman being a symbol and what he symbolizes, there's this idea that's brought to the forefront once we get into all the wedding stuff, where we start to discuss whether or not Bruce is an effective Batman if he's happy or sad. And we run into some execution problems here as well, especially when we get into the Best Man arc with the Joker just before the 50th issue. But like I said, the ideas are what really stand out to me, because it really starts here, where Batman starts to act, well, not like Batman. There's this idea that if Batman is happy, then he's not as effective. He's off his game. He starts to make mistakes that Batman otherwise wouldn't make. Like when the Joker massacres an entire wedding and he kills one of the hostages in front of Batman, and then later on gets a shot off on Batman, and after that blows up a wall knocking him out. Batman is off his game because he's in love, and because he's happy. And again, I have execution problems with this idea, because I get what King and Yanine were doing when they wrote and drew this issue, but it makes Batman look like a real knob. Like, why is he praying with the Joker? Especially after he's just killed a hostage right in front of him. I mean, I guess you can make the argument that he has a concussion after being shot in the head, but it's still really out of character and something that I can't get past when reading. But all that aside, in issue 49, when the Joker and Catwoman mortally wound each other and they're lying beside one another, each bleeding to death, they have a very beautifully written and drawn conversation about why Bruce can't marry Selina. Because Joker's argument is that he and the other villains love Batman more than Selina ever would. And his reasoning is that they do what they do to keep Batman on his toes, to keep him alert and active. They give him meaning. And all the death, all the tragedy, all the hurt makes Batman Batman. And if he marries Selina, then he loses his edge. In finding happiness, he loses all the qualities that make him Batman. After all, Batman is suicide. And why would a man who has everything to live for throw his life away? Hell, I didn't even bring up the Booster Gold arc, which I really enjoyed. And again, I can understand why people wouldn't like it, because while Booster is an idiot, his idiocy is taken to the furthest extreme that any writer can possibly take it. But I didn't mind it so much, because Tom King so far isn't writing characters to be exactly how they are in current continuity, but much rather, he's writing the characters as they are conceptually and ideally. And Booster Gold is often portrayed as the time-traveling jackass who shouldn't be allowed anywhere near time-traveling technology. But again, I digress. But in that arc, we see an alternate timeline where if Bruce Wayne is happy and content, everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and Gotham burns to the ground. Batman being happy is the last thing Gotham needs, and even though she doesn't want to admit this, Catwoman knows this to be true, or at least she thinks. And then we get to issue 50, which was very controversial, and for a lot of people was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I gotta say, I don't get why. I mean, if you're looking at the articles on Polygon or the Wall Street Journal, then sure, I can understand the frustration of feeling like Tom King's wasted everybody's time with all this build-up and having no payoff to there actually being a wedding. But if you actually read it, then I'm sorry, but I just don't see how you could think that. Bruce and Selina spill their hearts in these letters that they write to each other, and while Bruce is all like, yeah, let's do it, yeah, I'm finally ready to be happy, Selina's letter is basically her saying that no matter how much she wants to be with Bruce, she can't. Because everything that they've experienced in King's Run, she saw that everything goes to piss when Batman is happy. In her letter, she calls him an engine that turns pain into hope. And if Bruce is happy, then she kills that engine. She kills Batman. She'd be the death of Gotham's god, essentially. So she leaves him at the altar, depressed, lonely, and broken. All according to Bane's plan, because apparently Bane has been behind this whole thing for revenge for what Batman did to him back in I Am Bane. Okay, so let's talk about Bane. Now, when I first saw that final page reveal at the end of issue 50, I was like, this is really, really stupid. But then I thought about it some more, and then I thought to myself,
of course.
He's this master manipulator supervillain who's in charge of his own nation. It would only make sense that after Batman walked into his country, beat up all of his men, broke his back, and then stole the Psycho Pirate, who was the only thing keeping him from relapsing on Venom, and then beat him up again after he tried to retrieve the Psycho Pirate himself, he'd be a little angry and want to get back at Batman in the best way that he knew how. By breaking him. But this time, not physically. Because unlike in Nightfall, he's not trying to assert dominance over Batman. He's gonna break his spirit, because Batman humiliated him. And he's living up to his namesake and the ideas of which he chooses to represent as Bane. He's tormenting Bruce Wayne. He's ruining the symbol of Batman. His actions are causing a plague upon Gotham, and he's killing everything Batman cares about as though he were a venom in its veins. This run is the sequel that Nightfall deserved. Now, I don't know how he does everything that he does, and there are certainly potential logic issues that I have with this grand master plan, because I don't know what he had to do to get Holly Robinson to betray Selina Kyle of all people, and I don't know how he got Flashpoint Batman, Bruce's own father, to agree to hurt his own son, or how or why Gotham Girl is willing to betray Batman after all he did for her in curing her of the Psycho Pirate's effect on her from the first arc. Also, with the War of Jokes and Riddles being a prequel to Tom King's run, I'm confused as to why the Joker and Riddler are in his court. I mean, Joker I can see, because he was the one who sowed the seeds of doubt into Selina before their wedding. But why is the Riddler there? Is he just there because he told Bane about the War of Jokes and Riddles in Arkham? And Skeets too? He's been Booster's little buddy for, well, forever. Why is he there? I mean, I'm sure all these questions will be answered soon enough, but it is nice to know, though, that Bane is behind everything, including Dick Grayson getting shot in the head and becoming Rick Grayson. So stupid, and I doubt this was a choice made by King himself. If it was, then that's really stupid and the man's let me down, but I more so feel like this was a choice made by DC Editorial, because Dan DiDio has had it out for Nightwing ever since he survived Infinite Crisis. But I'm not gonna get into Dan DiDio and his weird hatred of DC Legacy heroes in this video. Anyways, Bane also drives a wedge between Batman and the GCPD by making Batman act like a crazy person. And again, I've heard complaints from people who say that they don't like the idea of Batman punching Gordon and beating up Arkham Asylum guards because he didn't go that far during A Lonely Place of Dying after Jason Todd was killed, and he didn't go that far after Spoiler died, and he didn't go that far after Tim died. But the difference between those instances and this isn't a result of occupational hazard. Bruce is being manipulated and pushed to the brink of insanity by Bane, and he knows that Bane is pulling the strings, and nobody can see that. Also, this is Dick. And not to say that he doesn't care about his other sidekicks and members of the Bat family, because he does. He cares very much for his pet orphans. But Dick is special. I didn't think about that wording ahead of time when I wrote this. But Dick was not only the first, but he was always there for Bruce. You know, these two share a bond that's very sacred. And I totally buy that Bruce becomes as unhinged as he does after Bane hires the KG Beast to shoot him in the head. Especially after he goes through everything that he goes through with Selina and her leaving him at the altar. But yeah, final thoughts. I really love this run so far. I mean, I didn't even talk about the one-shots that King has done. They've all been magnificent in my opinion. My favorite is a tie between the one with the little boy who thinks that he's Bruce Wayne and Swamp Thing. Although I will say, the Professor Pig one-shot, you know, with the art by Mitch Gerads, perfect. Simply perfect. In fact, I think I might like that one the best, mainly due to the art. Gerads really found his footing after working on Mr. Miracle, in my opinion, and his art in this issue really reflects that. And speaking of art, I love how the artist will change depending on the tone of the story. Joelle Jones has a few arcs, and she's amazing at drawing action scenes. In all honesty, I had never heard of Joelle Jones before she started working on Batman, and later on the Catwoman book that's currently running, but she needs to be put on more stuff. Like, pronto. Her art is breathtaking, and Mikel Janin is, well, he's Mikel Janin. But I've been singing his praises ever since he and Lemire were doing Justice League Dark for the New 52. So, I was already hip. If y'all are just now getting hip, then better late than never. But he's always been on point, and I especially loved his art during the War of Jokes and Riddles, which again, is a story that everyone hates, and I don't get why. It's so good. It's one of my personal favorite Riddler stories, which I don't think means a lot since there aren't that many Riddler stories in the first place, but I think it's one of the best. I mean, for all the problems that I have with Snyder's run as a whole, I still personally enjoy Zero Year a little more, but it's a really difficult thing to compare. You know, Zero Year and War of Jokes and Riddles are two totally different things, with two totally different approaches to the Riddler. Same with Batman Earth 1, which came out around the same time, which I actually reviewed. And if you want, you can check out my video on it. But Jeff Johns and Gary Frank have their own unique interpretation of the Riddler and how Batman deals with him. But that said, moving on, War of Jokes and Riddles is still a far better story than a lot of people give it credit for. It's a story about a guy telling the story of what happened from the perspective of other people who told him what happened. The structure of that kind of story alone is near impossible to pull off, and King finds a way to do it. I mean, I know a lot of people wanted to see more of the war, but the story is not about the war. The story is about Bruce and how he not only lost control and nearly killed the Riddler, but how the Joker, of all people, stopped him from crossing that line, and how he never fully got over that. Anyways, I love this run. I think it's amazing. I'm excited to see where it goes. But I also know that I'm in the minority. This is a run that I feel is written for a very specific audience who have a very specific way of viewing Batman. And I don't think that it has the same wide audience appeal that Snyder's run or Tomasi's run had. But for all the problems that I have with it, I think that it's just shy of being brilliant, if not being brilliant. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that I finally lost my mind? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share it with the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, adios, nachos, adios.